Yeah, thanks. So I would like to welcome all of you for joining us for the launch of this new guide on monitoring early childhood care and education from a human rights perspective. As I said, there are a number of registration and email we receive asking for the recording that shows the growing importance and interest of the right to early childhood care and education. So we are really pleased to be together today for this launch. I would like just to note that we will have a follow-up events as well, a workshop on the 24th of April, focusing on the process in monitoring early childhood care and education and on the practical use of this guide in different contexts. So feel free to join this follow-up events if you are interested in working on it more practically. So today we will have a presentation by Raja Kumari Mikhail Sami about our new monitoring guide, my dear colleague Raji. And then we will have some feedback and reaction from different actors about the relevance of early childhood care and education, about this monitoring guide in the context of today and the application in their own work area. So we are very pleased to have with us today Professor Eva Liot. She's an emerite professor of early childhood in the School of Education and Social Care at the University of East London. We will have as well Angela Kasule Nabowo, sorry Angela for your name, from the organization of ISER in Uganda, and Rola Mumne from UNESCO. And then we will have a time for Q&A and comment for you. This is a space where we want to engage with different actors working on early childhood care and education. So feel free as we go through these events to add comments or questions in the chat. We will engage at the end of the presentation. Before we dive into this new tool, I would like to recall the importance of monitoring the right to education. Indeed, assessing gaps and violation in the implementation of the right to education is essential to ensure its protection, it's protected, respected, and fully realized. And this is for us an essential steps for the realization of the right to education. And so this is why since 2008 now, RTE has been working on developing tools for the monitoring of the right to education, including human rights indicators, with the aim to guide civil society organization, but as well researcher and any person interested in monitoring the realization of the right to education from a right to education from a human rights perspective, and to help to strengthen advocacy and accountability. So this new guide is part of a broader work RTE is doing. You may know already about our online monitoring guide and some thematic guides we have already published on education under attack and higher education. So this is a new one focusing on ECCE specifically. It's the result of several years of work working on analyzing the international legal framework applying to early childhood care and education, and also the collaboration with many actors working on ECCE. It's important to note that for us at RTE, as more as we work on developing monitoring tools and implementing them and using them in different contexts, we always see this as a working process and refining some contents and formulation and questioning ourselves about this tool and particularly the indicator. So it's really an interesting process, and we know there are still work to do and to develop and to refine in the future on this guide when we are going to implement it more and use it for implementation in different country contexts, but also for the development of other guides we are going to start working on. So feel free really to come back with your comment on that, because there are things to work together on it. I would like to give a special thanks to Raji for leading our work on ECCE and for the hard work on creating this new tool that's going to be useful for many of us. And before we start, I would also like to thank the French Ministry of Europe and Foreign Affairs for supporting the publication of this guide, which will be also available in French soon. So we'll inform you about that as well. So now we are going to dive into the guide, and I'm going to turn to my colleague Reggie for giving us an overview of the monitoring guide and its application, practical application. Reggie, is floor is yours. But Reggie, you are muted, I think. I don't know if you speak, but we can't hear you. Oh, you cannot speak, Reggie. That's strange.
He is muted.
Yeah, Delphine, can you hear me?
Yeah, now it works.
Yeah, thanks. Give me a second to share the PPT. Hi, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, friends from the different time zones. First of all, thank you so much for joining us today, and that encourages a lot. And I'll just give an overview of how we have designed the tool and what would be its practical application. And you're most welcome to ask your questions at the end of the session. As we all know, early childhood is a crucial period for the overall well-being and development of children. And therefore, early childhood care and education is increasingly recognized as an essential aspect for realization of all rights, including educational rights. Sorry, Delphine?
All good, Reggie?
Okay. For realization of all rights, including educational rights and other social rights. Recognizing its importance, the states have made commitments through sustainable development goals to ensure that all children have equal access to quality early childhood care and education. Even in the recent Tashkent conference, they have reiterated this commitment, and also in addition, they also pledged to invest at least 10% of their total education budget to early childhood care and education. However, the snapshot from the UNESCO and UNICEF Global Report on ECCE indicates that states are yet to fully translate these commitments into legal obligations and implementable actions. Globally, only 46 countries have legal protection for early childhood care and education. Similarly, in comparison to other levels of education, ECCE is underfunded. This leads to increasing of private provision in ECCE. Therefore, in this scenario, the role of civil society is crucial, especially in reaffirming young children as rights holders, because we often take young children for granted. We assume that their needs are taken care by the parents, and therefore they often get neglected in the policy framework. So therefore, we need to advocate for policy formulation and also to seek accountability from the states. This can be done only through monitoring ECCE, especially by identifying the gaps in implementation and addressing them at all levels. This guide is therefore designed to primarily support civil society organizations to monitor early childhood care and education. While civil society is the primary focus, this guide can be also used by other stakeholders in the ECCE sector, especially by the states for self-assessment as well. The Tashkent Declaration also encourages civil society to support national early childhood care and education system through monitoring. And we believe this guide that what we have developed is a response to this call from the Tashkent Declaration. Let me go into the tool. The monitoring tool guide is broadly, it has broadly 4 major components. First, we intend to simplify the process and then provide a detailed analysis of the human rights standards. And importantly, we have developed over 100 human rights indicators and specific to monitoring early childhood care and education. We have also provided an outline about the advocacy process and how one can plan and strategize advocacy actions at different levels. So in terms of process, it is the usual process that is involved in any human rights monitoring work. But what makes it specific are the 2 important aspects. One, this process is customized. The description is customized to monitor early childhood care and education with relevant information and relevant resources. For example, accessing data is very difficult. And it's all the more difficult to access data on early childhood care and education. So this guide provides guidance on how to access data on early childhood care education and also the source from where the data can be accessed. Besides, this guide also encourages organizations to collect field data and use right to information systems for collection of data. And the second aspect of the process is we give a lot of emphasis to contextualize the monitoring tool to the local situation. For example, depending on the purpose, the tool can be customized. For example, a monitoring can be planned to advocate with policymakers to formulate a legal framework for 1 year of free primary education. Or it could be designed to support a particular community, like such as migrants, to get equal access and participation in ECCE. Or it could be an advocacy effort or a campaign for increased public investment in ECCE. Or it could be for writing shadow report on ECCE to a treaty body. And we are currently piloting this aspect with few partners in Uganda and Ghana as well.
Raji, sorry to cut you, but your PowerPoint is not in the slide view, so people don't see well. Maybe if you can click on view presenter, I think.
Okay, Delphine.
Or slideshow, maybe slideshow, I think. On the at the top, in the menu at the top, yeah, slideshow on the left.
Yeah,
here.
view, I got into, actually the icons get hidden with all the information, so that's why I'm not able to see it. Sorry.
If you are in slideshow, it doesn't work.
Yeah, can I just disconnect and
Okay.
reshare? Okay.
You just have to click on slideshow, I think, Reggie. You click on slideshow in the menu. Yeah,
Yes.
here.
Okay. Sorry about it.
No,
Can
all
you
good.
see?
Yeah, all good. Thanks, Reggie.
Okay. Thanks, Delphine. So that's where we explain in terms of the process. And the next important aspect that the guide focuses is on the human rights standards. Most of us who are engaged in advocacy work towards strengthening the international human rights law, we know the challenges that we have while advocating or while seeking accountability on early childhood care and education. Although right to education is recognized in most of the human rights treaties, only CEDA and also the Convention on the Rights of Migrant Workers explicitly recognize pre-primary education. On the other hand, the Convention on the Rights of the Child and the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, although it covers various provisions in the early childhood care and education, it doesn't explicitly talk about early childhood care and education. At the same time, the interpretation of the law provided by the treaty bodies in the form of general comments and the concluding observations, and importantly, the political commitments made by states refers to the specific state obligations that the states have. The World Declaration on Education for All, which was adopted in 1990, proclaims that education begins at birth. Since then, most of the declarations, almost all the declarations are that are adapted in relation to education, it includes early childhood care education. And this includes two specific declarations, which are the Moscow Framework of Action and Tashkent Declaration on Early Childhood Care and Education. So therefore, since this human rights standards on ECCE are scattered in multiple instruments, in multiple aspects, so we have analyzed them and consolidated in the tool. And also, this human rights standards are very important in developing the human rights indicators. So while we use the general obligations that are drawn from the international human rights law for general indicators, we have also used the specific state obligations, in particular on ECCE, from the interpretation of law. Especially, for example, General Comment 7 talks about early childhood. It enumerates in detail the various obligations of states. Similarly, other general comments by other treaty bodies and also by the Committee on the Rights of the Child, it enumerates various aspects of ECCE in their interpretation. So that's why we provided a chapter that clarifies and analyzes in detail the human rights standards, as well as we include them in the indicators. And the human rights indicators, this is the human rights indicators for monitoring early childhood care education is the central aspect of the tool. The human rights indicator is a specific information on the status of early childhood care and education related to the human rights standards and norms. We have developed over 100 indicators, as I said earlier, and we believe these indicators will help to identify the issues, to do concrete situational analysis, and make the advocacy more effective. As the indicators, SDG indicators does, these indicators also will help to monitor progress and assess the impact as we go. And we have developed 3 types of indicators. They are structural indicator, process indicators, and outcomes indicator. The structural indicator focuses mainly on the state commitments. Mainly it looks into the legal and policy framework. And the processes indicator looks into the state efforts to meet those commitments. And the outcome indicator is the end result. It focuses on the end result, how the particular commitments are realized into rights. And these indicators also categorized under different thematic headings that include access, quality, financing, governance, legal and policy framework, and it also talks about the non-state provision, and it also includes educators and caregivers as well. And each thematic section has a description. It provides a rationale of why we need to look into this dimension. And also it highlights the very specific or important norms that one need to look into it. And in the monitoring process, we also give a specific and strong emphasis for monitoring non-discrimination, inequalities, and also inclusion in access. While we encourage the users to identify the marginal groups in their own locality and contextualize the tool to their specific needs, we also have developed general indicators for monitoring discrimination inequalities. At the same time, we have also developed specific indicators on certain vulnerabilities, like for example, on sex and gender identity, and discrimination on grounds of racial, ethnic, caste, religious, and indigenous identities. And also we have specific indicators focusing on nationality and migration status. We have also focused on disabilities, children with disabilities, indicators focusing on them. We have also specific indicators focusing socioeconomic status, place of residence, especially that includes, and other vulnerabilities that includes children living with mothers in prison, rural children, and children with HIV/AIDS, etc. The other important aspect is we also look into a holistic approach. While most of the indicators that we have used in the tool, while they also applicable to other levels of education, we have also specific indicators that focuses aspects related to education, health, nutrition, care, and protection. Like for example, we have indicators on nutrition because nutrition is one of the very important thing, and children cannot go on a hunger at this age. So we have an indicator about provision of adequate, culturally appropriate, and safe nutrition. And similarly, we have also children at this age need a lot of healthcare services. So whether it includes immunization services, vitamin supplements, and all aspects. So that's another thing. We have also included the SDG indicators that monitors children's development. And similarly, we also include indicators on the care dimension. So I've just given here some few examples, but in the tool, we have many more indicators. So this looks into the equal responsibility of both father and mother in the care and upbringing of a child. We also look into the violence dimension, especially from a protection aspect. We have quite a lot of indicators on that, whether it looks especially children who are into the conflict areas. And also it looks into the playway method, which is also a key in the early childhood period. The structure and presentation. This is how the indicators are presented in the tool, in the guide. We have a set of indicators, and that indicators are accompanied or substantiated with the state obligations. And as I mentioned earlier, we have two types of state obligations. We have general state obligations that are drawn from the international human rights law. And also we have specific state obligation, like the one, for example, enhanced policy and legal framework on ECCE, including the right to at least 1 year of free and compulsory pre-primary education, which is taken from the Tashkent Declaration. Similarly, the other one taken from the General Comment. And we also have questions. We believe these questions will help into the analysis, further analysis of these indicators while we draft the report, and also to look into, to deep dive into these issues. And while these indicators, each indicator, they are hyperlinked. And when we click the hyperlink, then it will take us to the website, our website, where the description of the indicators will be provided. And we have the description for all these indicators. And this description covers a definition, a comment, and also the human rights standards, and whether this indicator covers what level of education it covers. And also it includes the type of indicator and other aspects. The other important dimensions that we emphasize in the tool in relation to indicators as well as overall monitoring is to keep the best interest of the child at the core of your planning and in monitoring. And also the other dimensions, what we emphasize is to disaggregate data. And this data disaggregation, we have also included in the indicators itself, and also in the briefing and the explanation that we provide. We also highlight in what type of disaggregation can be done with these indicators. The other aspects that we emphasize is also the gender sensitive monitoring. When I mean gender sensitive, it not only in collecting data that is disaggregated by sex, but it also involves the personnel who will be undertaking the monitoring. It also integrating gender perspective in the monitoring plan. The other important aspect we also emphasize is the community-centric approach to monitoring. That means involving community members for whom the monitoring is being done at all stages, especially in the decision-making process. And that's how the monitoring and the end results will be sustainable, and it is also the rights of the community and children to be part of the process. The other aspects that we also emphasize is to look into the principles of human rights-based approach to data, especially about this community-centric approach and principles of human rights-based approach to data. ESR Net has a position paper, and also they have developed quite a lot of resources and tools and how this can be done. So we have provided those links as well. We are part of the network, and we also provided those links in the tool. The other important aspect that we emphasize is also, while we monitor inequalities and discrimination, it is essential to address intersectional discrimination as well. So that is also something that we emphasize. And this is the last part of the guide. It talks about reporting and advocacy. We have not gone into very detail into how to do advocacy. It's basically an outline just to indicate with whom we can do advocacy. Especially depends on the purpose of the monitoring. The advocacy can be customized. It can be with the local government, or it could be with at the national level, or it could be even with the treaty bodies. That's why we also emphasize the community participation, because that can be also one of the strategies where community participation in democratic spaces where they take the advocacy on their hands. We have also provided an outline of few advocacy strategies in terms of, and also we link tools, especially the tools that are created by Amnesty International on public campaigns and building on community participation. We have added them as resources for further reference. So these are some of the advocacy strategies that we have suggested. It's networking, reporting to human rights mechanisms, engaging with duty bearers, that's a core and main important one, and public campaigns, and community participation in democratic spaces, and also legal interventions. The other resources and practical tips, you may see different icons throughout the tool. While the icon with the paperclip, it is an icon to provide explanation or definition of a particular concept. If, for example, if we say what nurturing care, if we refer to nurturing care framework, and in a box item, we put what is nurturing care framework and the link to it. Similarly, for community-centric approach or to any other definitions any other concept that we use in the tool, we provide those informations. And the other icons that you may see is an arrow and an eyelet. This both are related to resources. Arrow leads to the RTE's main monitoring guide, where certain information that we provided here in a brief form are elaborated in the general main monitoring tool. And similarly, the eyelet provides external resources. This includes resources developed by other organizations, other human rights agencies and intergovernmental agencies. So we have included those relevant resources, and all of them are hyperlinked so it can be accessed. And the sign with the bulb, these are all tips while doing monitoring. So it gives some kind of practical tips on questions and how it can be done. And at the end, the pencil sign, this includes quotes, especially from important reports and landmark declarations, just to highlight the essence of ECCE and the importance of ECCE. And finally, I would like to acknowledge the French Ministry of Europe and Foreign Affairs for supporting us in this publication. And I would like to also acknowledge Mercedes from OMEP, Yoshi, Gaga, Rola, Maune, Agate, and Maya from UNESCO, and also Gina and Isidora from Education International, and Juliana and Elinar, our members from RTE, for their support in reviewing this document, the earlier draft, and providing valuable inputs. And again, on behalf of Delphine and I also like to thank Maria from Warm Up Cyprus for the images that she has provided. And also Aurelia, one who designed the book, and also our friends Padma, Margarita, and Simon for their support in proofreading and technical work. I would like to especially thank children from Cyprus, Thailand, Japan, and France for the beautiful drawings and that we used. These drawings are from the children from the early childhood care and education, like they are pre-primary school children. And at the end, I would like to also thank the children and ECCE personnel in India with whom I journeyed with. It is my experience with them that helped me to visualize the practical dimension and application of this tool. And once again, thank you.
Thank you, Raji, for the presentation of the guide. As you can see, it's a very comprehensive guide with a lot of information to go through. And as Raji flagged it at the end, I think all we want is to have change at local, national level and concrete change for the kids. So, you know, this is the tools like us as a civil society organization and academics and other people working at states level or in intergovernmental organization can use, but all we want at the end is really concrete change and access to quality early childhood care and education for everyone. And thanks, Raji, for reminding us the work on the ground and the inspiration you got from the kids to do this work. So I would like to turn to my dear colleague Anjena Kasule Namobo, the director of the Initiative for Economic and Social Rights in Uganda, ISER Uganda. She's a human rights advocate with extensive experience on economic and social rights, including the right to education. As part of the work of ISER, they empower community to monitor and to claim for economic and social rights, including the right to education, and to report on violation. They have done some work already on monitoring early childhood care and education in partnership with Human Rights Watch and published a report last year. So I'm turning to you, Angela, to know how you see the use of this guide for practical use at national and local level, and including with the community you work with in your country, in Uganda. Thank you.
Thank you, Delphine, and thank you, Raja, for the presentation, and thank you to the entire Right to Education initiative team for putting this together. I know this was done with other partners. Thank you very much. So as ISA, which is the Initiative for Social and Economic Rights, we do monitor the implementation of the right to education in Uganda. And we have done research, like Delphine has rightly mentioned, that we also published a report recently with Human Rights Watch around access to pre-primary education. Maybe for background purposes, allow me to state that currently in Uganda, there is no public or state provision of pre-primary education or nursery education. It is all private. And when you look at our Education Act, which is the major law governing the education sector, it leaves the provision of that sector to the private agencies, and also and specifically mentions that the financing of pre-primary education is a responsibility of parents or guardians. And the state is only charged with the regulatory function, which is also inadequate. So as a country, Uganda, but also as members of civil society, this monitoring guide is timely for Uganda. And because we do advocate for legal and policy reform, among others in the implementation of the right to education in Uganda and in the region. Timely because Uganda is up for review by the Committee on the Rights of the Child in September 2025. We have already submitted an alternative report for that process. But also, why is it timely? Why is this guide timely, and why do we need to use it for monitoring? Is because we are very lucky as a country that in a space of less than a year, we have got 3 different reports, independent reports, making a case for pre-primary education. So one by ISA and Human Rights Watch. Then we have the report of the Education Policy Review Commission, which was published in January 2025, which concluded that the best investment any country can make is early child. And then we also have a report by the World Bank published in February, which also makes a clear economic case for Uganda to invest in early childhood development, including free nursery education. So when you look at that, what we are dealing with as a country, we see that this guide is timely and it can strengthen our monitoring work. And specifically, when you look at the guide, I have had a chance to go through it. The guide provides clarity around the scope of monitoring. And this is clearly articulated. And I have, I'll tell you that going forward, after reading this guide, we are able to, to focus better, because as ISA, our focus is pre-primary education. So this guide talks about early childhood care and education. But as the guide provides, we are able to define the scope around the monitoring. And for us, that is pre-primary education, which looks at ages 3 to 6, because we do not have the capacity currently as an organization to go into early childhood care. But also the guide goes into providing thematic focus. And for us, looking what is provided in the guide around financing, equal access and inclusion, regulation, privatization. So it speaks to what we need as a country, what we need to monitor and be very focused, have, that thematic focus, because financing is key to us, because currently there is no state provision, which means government is not putting any money into that area. It is completely private sector led. And when it is private sector led, of course, there are issues of regulation, because, a lot of things happen and human rights violations happen when private sector comes into such spaces. So, and that regulation, of course, will take into issues of personnel, issues of the quality that is provided, but also access, because when it is private sector led, there are issues of access, especially for the different groups of people. But also the guide goes ahead in defining the scope to look at, target group. Which target group, when you're monitoring, which target group should you look out for? Do you want to do it general? But I think it gives a lot of specifics. And for us, where we stand, Our interest mainly is from rural and remote areas, because we know that when there is private sector provision, the private sector will not go to areas where they are not going to make a profit. Children from poor socioeconomic background, they are not able to get an adequate income, so they will not go there. But also, there is general monitoring that we can do around legal and policy reform. For instance, if we are advocating as an institution to make sure that government at least provides 1 year of pre-primary, and you're looking at change in the amendment, for instance, of the Education Act, that would be public, like that would be, general. It's a broader category looking at the whole country, because everyone would benefit, but the guide, gives that specifics. The guide is also very elaborate on the use of indicators, and I was very happy to read, the detail, around the qualitative and quantitative, and as a human rights organization, but also looking at human rights in general. If you do not employ all those approaches, it is very difficult to tell the true human rights picture. So the combination of both, but also going into detail around the structure indicators, the progress indicators, and the outcome indicators, and giving guidance on what each entails, what you should look out for, I think is very good. That guidance is really very welcome. And also the guides talks about contributing to has a space around contributing to the realization of the, right to education. In this case, for us, would be pre-primary, making it holistic and advocating, for the amendments. It also goes in detail to show how that should be done. And in reading, as able, to see like, how do you frame, how do you approach that monitoring? How do you frame maybe an advocacy campaign around that? And I'll give you an example. Uganda provides for free universal primary education, and there are already efforts by communities, parents, and at the school level to be able to put up structures within existing public primary schools. So in reading this guide, you're able to see even what approach you're able to take in coming up with all that. But specifically around approach and methodology, this monitoring guide speaks to community-led monitoring and backs this up from information or pronouncements from the Committee on the Rights of the Child that emphasizes the involvement of parents, community members, and other relevant stakeholders for sustainable change. The involvement of communities, of course, this is participation, which is, the human rights-based approach. But why this is key for us as an institution is that it directly feeds into our programming as an organization, because we have a base of community-led monitoring, where we have, this string of community advocates, people based within the communities that are monitoring and documenting the implementation of the right to education. So this already fits into our structure, and we are able to, to utilize this. But also very key to note about this guide around community-led monitoring is that it promotes efforts around citizen-led data under the SDG reporting framework, because I know, like for Uganda and other countries, they are taking up citizen-led data to be able to complement, official data, where a number of tools are being developed to make sure, that the reporting for the SDGs is as participatory as possible. So this monitoring guide feeds into the SDG reporting framework on community-led data, but also for us as an institution. And also lastly, about the guide, it is very user-friendly, and it provides a number of links to all the resources that are mentioned. So be it concluding recommendations from the treaty mechanisms, be it, different laws and, commitments at different levels. It is pointing to them, and you don't have to leave it and go and search for that or look for it elsewhere. You're able to know to follow the links to be able to get more information and be able to actually get country-specific information. So thank you very much. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much, Angela, for this comprehensive feedback about the guide and to share with us the different type of reporting you did, for instance, to the UN and the World Bank, and how this type of guide can help us to move towards the relation of the world of early childhood care and education. You mentioned the different thematic, and I think is what we've tried in this guide is to look into different area. And as you will move through monitoring and using the guide, you can pick a specific area or specific marginalized group, and maybe working on a specific group and working on ECCE and maybe another level of education. And again, like at RTE, we try to keep on developing this guide and tool and indicators to be able to cross all different thematic and groups. I would like now to turn to Eva Lloyd. She's an emerite professor of early childhood in the School of Education and Social Care at the University of East London. And she have published several publications recently on early childhood care and education. For us as RTE, it's very important to work and collaborate with academics to strengthen the research, to have a research link as well to the human rights framework and states' obligation. And I know, Eva, you have worked as well on the question of privatization stressed by Angela. So we are very pleased to have you today. And I'm turning to you now. Thank you.
Thank you, Delphine, for this introduction. And it is a real pleasure to provide some comments because, of course, I've had a chance to see the draft of this report, like Angela before me. And thank you, Raji, for giving everybody who's attending today a chance to get an impression of what's in it. Chapter 1 straight away, Chapter 1 straight away plunges us into how necessary this monitoring is if we see how many problems still exist globally about access to early education, particularly access for the children under 3 to early childhood educational development. And it gives us an insight into the data on the lack of equality between countries, but also very importantly within countries. So I was particularly pleased to see Raji introducing us to the contents of Chapter 4, which deals with assessing indicators and grouping indicators, and reminding us of the importance of looking both at structures and processes and outcomes. And that's very much where my research focuses, which is into marketized systems of early childhood education and care around the world. Now, my experience confirms that monitoring is constantly needed, even where a state does establish legal instruments from a human rights perspective in order to offer or guarantee children access to ECCE. And the research that I've been involved in suggests really that even when a state makes efforts to realize those rights and implement those rights in provision, there may be structures and processes there that nevertheless lead to outcomes and to processes which are not optimal and which are negative or not as good as was anticipated. And I can illustrate that with reference to 2 studies that I've been involved in. And I won't go into any detail because I really want to hear from the audience what your questions and observations are. But one of the studies I did was a study I led was in Lebanon, where the government in 2014 and then 2016 implemented access to public education, including pre-primary education for all children, and that included the very many Syrian refugee children in that country, because you may know that Lebanon had hosted more Syrian refugees per head of the population than any other country in the world. As the political and the socio-economic situation in Lebanon deteriorated dramatically, what was happening that was in their mixed market, where any parent who could afford it would put their children in private pre-primary education. The disadvantaged Lebanese children and the Syrian child refugees who were using public pre-primary education were being crowded out by the children of parents who could no longer afford private education. So this was a dramatic shift, and the initiative founded. The situation has changed again, but we all know how tragic the situation there is at the moment. And the second study I want to refer to was a study by one of my PhD student of mine, Adejoke Adewale Ogunkoya, who studied the impact of the introduction in 2004, so earlier, of a right to pre-primary education in Nigeria. She studied that in 3 Western Nigerian states and looked at what happened on the ground. Two striking issues were the funding model for this, which made it in some cases impossible for states to get any national funding for this national initiative at all. The second problem was interesting because on the ground, where heads of public schools and heads of private not-for-profit institutions were offering pre-primary education, they also wanted to meet parents' demand for childcare, if you like, for their younger children, but parents were out at work, and pre-primary education confined to certain hours in term time, these did not meet their need for early years services. And as a result, in those settings where the providers tried to meet those needs and have younger children, and there was overcrowding, there was inadequate funding, inadequate an environment indoors and outdoors, and nobody benefited from that. So again, that initiative still needed lots of support because of the risk of it foundering in various places, especially rural ones. I want to jump straight to the final chapter in this important report and say, well, if you are thinking about how to design a human rights-based advocacy plan for which this chapter gives you guidance, then bear in mind the complex issues that arise even in countries that have tried to implement rights because of the contextual reasons. And I hope you will find, I'm confident you will find the guide incredibly helpful in this respect. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eva, and thanks for reminding we need to monitor even when the right is implemented, because there are always more to do. And this is a progressive realization as well on how we can move towards the full realization of the right to education. So thanks for flagging that. And also we have to work in all countries, including the one where we think it's already implemented. There are much work to do, and we really hope this guide will help you to do so. As the time is running now, I would like to turn to my colleague Rola Mumne, who is leading the program on the right to education at UNESCO headquarters. She's an expert in international law. From the University of Paris, we have been working a lot with UNESCO on the legal framework of early childhood care and education. And Rola, I know UNESCO is planning to do more work on monitoring and supporting states for the implementation of early childhood care and education at national level. So I'm turning to you now to have your feedback on you see the usefulness of this guide for also your work as an intergovernmental organization. Thanks, Rola.
Thank you very much, Delphine. Thank you, colleagues, and thank you very much, Raji, as well for the very interesting presentation. It's really my pleasure to join this launch and to be here with you for this really important event. I would like also to mention that my colleague, Mrs. Rokaya Jawara, who is also the global lead, UNESCO global lead on ECCE, is also present with us today, and she can also step in to engage in the discussion. Just maybe to mention that, first of all, UNESCO really welcomes the launch the monitoring guide as timely, and as said, I fully agree, timely and really valuable contribution to advancing the right to ECCE globally. This guide really reinforces, I would say, the imperative of adopting a rights-based lens in monitoring and assessing progress in this really important area, and we are all convinced that it's a key area. So the guide has, I would like to announce that the guide has already been integrated as a key reference in the context of UNESCO's ongoing work to develop and pilot the analytical framework on the right to ECCE, which will be tested in 3 pilot countries in the coming months. Its methodological approach offers some kind of practical tools for assessing the implementation of this right in alignment with a human rights obligation. So drawing on the guide's methodology, the analytical framework aims to strengthen the national capacity to identify legal and policy gaps while ensuring that national reviews are really grounded in human rights based approach. And its desk-based research methodology is complemented by the direct engagement of national intersectoral teams, which will include government representatives, parliamentarians, ECCE practitioners, and obviously civil society organizations and actors. So this ensures that the country review is both technically robust and all anchored in local realities. And the framework's primary objectives, I would say, is really to identify legal policy implementation gaps, to suggest and propose actionable recommendations, and it's designed to strengthen the national capacities to operationalize the right to ECCE and ultimately feed into a broader systemic reforms. So this work forms a critical building block within the UNESCO Evolving Right to Education initiative, which responds to the Tashkent Declaration call to examine the feasibility and necessity of enshrining the right to ECCE in an international normative instrument by consolidating normative guidance and offering operational tools for implementation and monitoring. UNESCO really aims to bridge the gap between global standards and national action. So in this spirit, I would say UNESCO remains committed to working in close partnership with civil society and other key stakeholders to translate human rights commitment into meaningful change for children and their families. And the analytical framework represents both a strategic policy instrument and the participatory process to ensure that ECCE systems are equitable, inclusive, and grounded in the rights of the child. And in this respect, the monitoring guide is more than a technical tool. It's a call to accountability by rooting assessment and monitoring in human rights law. It ensures that the early years are not treated as an optional policy area, but really as an integral part of the child's right to education. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rola. That's a very nice conclusion to recall how early childcare education is part of the right to education and how monitoring needs to be based as well on this right dimension and state's obligation and accountability. I like to strengthen accountability as you stress it, Rola. You mentioned the participatory approach, and I think like moving forward of collaborating, working together, state, civil society organization, academics, I think it's the best way for moving forward for the full realization of the right to education. So I'm glad we can collaborate together on this different area. And I see many colleagues as well online we work with. So I would like to thank everyone for being involved in the mobilization of making the right to education a reality, and especially early childcare and education, as this need to be really strengthened if we want to realize the right to education for all, and this starts at birth and in the early age. So that's going to be important. Unfortunately, I see it's already time for our events, and we didn't have enough time to engage with all of you, but I would like to recall we have this workshop on the 24th of April where we are going to dive more into the guide and discuss with you practical applicability in your own work and context, where we will be doing some exercise and you could ask questions and interact more. So I really encourage you to join at this moment if you are available. Feel free also to reach us at RTE, especially Raji, if you are interested in doing any work on ECCE. We are looking for funds at the moment to be able to do more monitoring and supporting at national level. So feel free to approach us and explore way of doing that. Is going to be very important. We monitor and collect data on early childcare and education at national level to move globally for strengthening the implementation and full realization. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll put again the link of the guide is on our website on the monitoring tool and thematic focus, and we really look forward to engaging again with all of you. And thank you very much again to Rola, Eva, and Angela for joining us today in this collaborative perspective to discuss implementation of early childcare education, including through monitoring. Thank you very much, everyone, and we'll be in touch very soon. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and congratulations again.
Lovely to meet you all. Very
Bye-bye.
interesting.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.